Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel doing these solo modes. So, I did the Struggle of the Six Samurai second chapter, Warriors of Yore. It is weird that there isn't really a marker in this main menu to show which ones have second stories and which ones don't. I guess if you click on something and it brings you directly to it, that might be an indicator where clicking on this doesn't do that. So you could click through every single one of these stories to find the 4 or 5 of them that have second chapters, but you'd think there would be a plus sign or some kind of symbol. And as far as menus go, it really would make a lot more sense to click on this and then have these secondary chapters just appear under collapse and uncollapse them. So we only have 2 more stories at the moment to go through. I played a little bit off screen and got a few more of the challenges completed, but not everything completed. Still, there's room for work here, room for work here. Not that it really matters. Today we're going to be looking at Bujin of the Divine Realm, which is a heavenly deities who protect the earthly world. A dark cloud looms over a seemingly peaceful world. Wield the power of the Bujing-ji to crush the schemes of evil. So visually, this doesn't look that different from the half samurai, half robotic creatures, and there is just kind of a inconsistency. If we kind of scroll back, though, it has kind of been a long time where you haven't had a solo mode that isn't fairly heavy into the Asian influences. Yeah, with the exception of the Ultra Athletes, which I would definitely say that's more of a Western influence, but you have Land of Tinyi, which is, just by the thumbnail you can tell, is very Asian influenced. Then you have the second chapter of the Six Samurai. And now we have Bunjin. Maybe it'll prove not to be so samurai focused. And we once again have one of the longer stories where it's scenario, then one practice, one duel, then a gate for 2 more duels. So let's try and burn through this a little bit faster. These may be just more robotic, but even in the name you definitely have a Japanese word there that's not being localized. This would be probably at least the 3rd or 4th time we've had a solo story, though, where there's some kind of divine being. It clearly is the case that they lean heavily on retelling similar stories of godlike creatures. Arguably, for a longer running collectible card game, probably would make more sense to get more into the details. And instead of having godlike beings that are of the ultimate power and then having the power creep upward and upward and upward, creating even more powerful creatures that can beat the original godlike beings, you should probably go in the other direction and make demigods and creatures that are slightly weaker than the ultimate characters but have some kind of larger numbers or unique abilities. But instead, in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's mostly a case that every story is in its own kind of unique world that seems to have very little crossover, or no crossovers at all. Anyways, many divine beings, both good and evil, live in the heavenly plane of Takamagahara. That's a mouthful. This world was ruled by 7 deities created by the symbolic Princess goddess Hirumi. This definitely seems robotic, but even in the audio, you're getting very traditional Japanese music. She wields 3 Bujinji weapons. Let's see, Bujinji Quillin, Bujinji Crow, and Bujinji Peacock. Is that Quillin? That's probably Quillin. So it sounds like it's 3 animals, or weapons in the forms of animals, to exhibit her true power as the supreme deity Amaterasu, which that's certainly a word I've heard before. A lot of this probably comes from Shintoism or Buddhism, or she was a powerful force to be reckoned with, not only in the heavenly world but also on Earth, where she ruled over humanity. It's funny that they're using the word Earth here, because we've seen so many different variants of Earth. It would be insane to try and take all the solar stories that are just in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and try and argue that all of them happened in the same universe on the same planet Earth over the course of billions of years even. There's just too many random occurrences that happen all over the place. Plus, in other stories, they've already introduced the idea of multiverses. And it would be kind of strange to pick one story and make it canon that this is where Earth is. As the defender of the world, she rarely intervened with their lives. Watching over heaven and earth with radiating love, she wielded her powers only when disaster was imminent. Here's a great example of localization where you really need to go one way or another. You have this goddess character, Amaterasu, which obviously is of Eastern mythos. And then you've localized a capital H heaven and a capital E earth as proper nouns, in the same way that you would localize a capital G in Christianity as Yahweh, the God of Christianity, instead of a lowercase g, just which would mean any generic God being described. And it just doesn't kind of make sense that if in the Amaterasu myth there is a heaven and earth, you should probably be using the Japanese phrase and not translating it, instead of going with a heaven and earth concept. And then certainly that would give them an excuse to write more, by just using the phrase and then putting an asterisk. This phrase means this phrase means that. She wielded her powers only when disaster was imminent. Hirumi lent her Bujinji to 3 trustworthy Bujintai. Tay. It's probably T. I don't know how you'd pronounce that. Probably T. And tasked him with the role of guarding the earth, which can often be difficult for the gods to reach. How can you be a god and then have difficulty of anything? One of them was Benjunti Susanowo, is responsible for protecting the princess goddess with the 2 sacred swords, Quilin and Crane. Yep. So yeah, it does once again just kind of feel like robotic samurai as far as the visual themes. Skilled in the martial arts, he is the fiercest Bujinti of the 3. The second is Bujinti Kagutsuchi, who wields an invincible shield, Crow, that blocks all attacks. Which arguably, if we're gonna localize things with heaven and hell, why not just also localize these names? I think it would definitely be a lot more palatable if you broke this down to some other word, Bunjunti could probably literally be translated into Great Warrior or something, or localized and changed to Great Warrior. And Kagatsuchi in that may have some meaning too, like giant shield, or shield bearer. And so why not go that full distance, both in the card game and in the solo mode for the digital card game. There is a high level of ridiculousness if you are a Western English speaker and you're trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And there is this feeling that as you're naming cards, you're struggling to pronounce Japanese words. Although, unlike the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, there's no tournament play or anything that really requires you to call out and like commentate on your plays. You could easily say nothing or just say, I summon this monster. Moving on with the story. Due to his superior intelligence, he is responsible for building strategies when going into battle. The last is Bunjunti Tsukuyomi, who is skilled in witchcraft. Okay, so now we've got witchcraft also being included. And I couldn't even really tell you what this is supposed to be. This feels almost Native American in its appearance. There's way too much of that, I think, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, where they just let random artists draw random things and there really is no consistency. Clearly, all the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! From the beginning of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime should have an Egyptian god theme to it. And if you were going to rip off Yu-Gi-Oh! It would be fairly wise to just stick to a one theme like that. And you probably could get away with it too if you just had an Egyptian god card themed game and all the characters were always based on something that looked like an Egyptian style. It might get boring after a while, but definitely would be way more consistent than Yu-Gi-Oh! At least most of Magic the Gathering has a heavy consistency amongst its art style, being in that Dungeons & Dragons fantasy visuals, and Hearthstone is fairly consistent for most of their cards in being the cartoony fantasy style that they're in. He wears a cloak of peacock that absorbs power, and in addition to exploration and healing his allies, he monitors all anomalies from both heaven and earth. It's funny he's calling this a peacock because the most notable thing you would describe a peacock as having large, colorful feathers. And this is large feathers, but it really looks more like a bat's wing, and it's all one color. You would probably describe this more a phoenix, if anything. They were representatives of Hirumi, overseeing the world's anomalies, only using their powers for good. This is probably about the third time also that we've had a story where Yu-Gi-Oh! Has introduced one ultimate god character and then introduced weaker subordinates, because the card game just needs more than one ultimate card in an expansion. Or expansions will introduce a bunch of weak subordinates and then reveal one ultimate card that's stronger. Which, even in that design, it definitely shows that they have this focus on making only a couple of ultra rare style cards that are way more powerful than the super rares, and the super rares are more powerful than the rares, and the rares are more powerful than the normals, and it's frankly too many steps. I could see just normals, rares, and super rares working better, and I could see not thinking in those terms and just making cards because they sound interesting or they play well in testing, instead of trying to create large differences. The hope I imagine there is that they think ultra rare cards in Yu-Gi-Oh would be way more valuable, and they want to encourage people to collect and trade Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the real world, and they are definitely looking for potential secondary market profits to happen for collectors, enough so that people will buy blind packs, and make first market profits for Konami themselves, or Yu-Gi-Oh itself as a corporation. And the story just ends abruptly, so all they're really admitting here is that they either wanted to give me some more of the secondary currency, or that this part of the scenario is going to go even further and keep going in the story. One day, Susanoo was summoned to Hirumi. He is suspected of abusing the people of Earth by misusing the power of the Bunjinji. Who, do we know this character? Or is he just being introduced now? I think he's just being introduced now. Susanoo tried to refute these baseless allegations, but in turn angers her. As a result, Susanoo had his power sealed into 5 separate Bunjinji and was banished to Earth. When Susanoo awoke on Earth, he had lost most of his power. To clear himself of the crime he did not commit and to search for the Bunjinji that were scattered on Earth, Susanoo hid his name and set out the journey under a new name, Yamato. Yamato is a pretty well known character in Japanese. There's a giant battleship named Yamato. Or there was one. While traversing the Earth, Yamato met many people in the various places he went. One showed Yamato where the light fell from the heavenly realm, which helped him find one of the Bunjinji. One had been affected by a natural disaster. Despite having trouble finding food to eat, they served a meal to Yamato, a stranger and a traveler. One never missed a prayer to the deities in the heavenly world. So we're naming like 4 or 5 subordinates of this secondary character now. However, the gods did not answer their prayers and offered salvation, and instead they were exposed to further hardship and pain. On his journey, what Yamato saw was people suffering due to the tyranny of the divine realm. What if the duties I had fulfilled in heaven were making people suffer? ? When did the heavenly world begin going down the wrong path? Yamato, despite his suspicions, continued his journey. So just like a completely different story with a completely different character, and so I guess there is a slight reason why you'd separate those scenarios out. But it definitely sounds like Yamato is just going to end up being the antagonist to Hirumi. After a long journey, Yamato located the 5 Bunjinji. You'd think you would play a little bit of the card game before Yamato recollected all of his items. I mean, we really are not getting much of a interactive experience here. At last he gains the power once again as Bunjinji Susanoo. Having accomplished a great goal, the two Bunjinji allies appeared before him. So I guess he was the third of this group. It's funny, they tell me a name and then I immediately forget it. That's how little these stories sink in. They did not want to be noticed by Yamato, and so Bunjintai Katsuchi was disguised as Bujin Mikazuchi. Wow. Yeah, definitely this screams that this all just needs to be localized better. Effectively, we're dangerously close to a Transformers situation here, where every single character has a disguise and transforms into a different form, which is fine, but it's a lot of Japanese words. And Bujintai Tsukiyomi as Bujin Awasuda. Stealing their power and changing their names, they descended to Earth to look for Yamato. As Arasuda, Tsukiyomi monitored both realms and he realized there was something wrong with Hirumi. He also learns that there is a being that lost its form as a god and became a miasma of darkness. This sentient miasma of darkness, Hiruko, spread its hatred everywhere and plotted the destruction of the world, including Takamagahara, which I'm not sure what that word means. Wow, this is way too much jargon in general. To do this, he secretly manipulated Hirumi and tried to get rid of Susanoo, who was a mighty force in the heavens. Yamato, having learned the truth, vowed to punish not only the ones who wronged him, but also those who torment the people of Earth. Yamato, now equipped with the 5 Bunjinji, descended once again as Bunjintai Susanoo. It definitely feels like this is half samurai, half Autobot type character. Has Transformers. Thus reunited, the 3 Bunjintai ascended to Takamagahara to meet with Hirumi. And the story is just gonna end there. Here's the problem though, we still really have no idea how any of these cards work. You would assume that there's a lot of equipment cards, since there's a focus on equipment, and that there would be some level of special summoning where you would get stronger versions of characters after certain criteria are met. Looking at this card, I can see it's a pendulum summon card, so pendulum summoning, I believe, is basically the latest new gimmick that they've added to Yu-Gi-Oh!, which would imply that this expansion and these cards are relatively new, but relative to 25 years, not any real guarantee that this expansion came out anytime in the last 3 or 4 years even. Yeah, you could tell me that they haven't made a new expansion for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game in 5 years, and I would believe you. It's just not something that's advertised enough that I follow it, so I really have no idea. I do know that they are trying to promote Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush as a whole new card game, so I could see them just not really making anything for Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course, that really wouldn't make a lot of sense because Konami has been habitually terrible about making Yu-Gi-Oh! Mobile games and card games, and Master Duel definitely is the right kind of game for Yu-Gi-Oh! To make, but there's really no guarantee that they won't also make a mobile game that plays a little bit differently and experiments with yet another way to try and sell the same cards once again. If you were a huge Yu-Gi-Oh fan, you probably would have played 4 or 5 Yu-Gi-Oh games, and if you were rich, you very possibly would have bought thousands of packs across 4 or 5 different Yu-Gi-Oh games, with none of the packs crossing over. And that definitely would be a deal breaker for me. If they abandoned Master Duel, I would not jump to a new Yu-Gi-Oh game unless the cards transferred over and there was a pretty good argument as to why to jump to the new game. The Master Duel app is at its 2-year anniversary, and they haven't put a lot of updates or support into it as much as I would like, so on that, if they made a new game, then that would just continue a pattern amongst Konami to make new games instead of improving or just maintaining the existing games. So what makes a Bunjin deck unique? A Bunjin deck main characteristic is that the monsters have different roles based on their type. The Winged Beast type monsters will support you with effects activated in the hand. The Beast type monsters will support you with effects activated in the graveyard, allowing you to attack your opponent with a Beast Warrior type monsters on the field. The key to victory is getting your cards in the right place where they can help you. This is super complicated by the sounds of it. Let's see how well we can really play it. Of course, this is just practice, so it's just going to tell me exactly what to do. I guess the question, too, is does that mean only certain types can actually attack, and several types of a Bunjin can't attack? Use your Bunjin cards to win the duel this turn. Activate the continuous spell card Bunjin Cadence. K-Descendants. Okay, so activate this spell. It can't be destroyed by opponents. Send Bunjin Quailin from your hand to the graveyard to activate the effect of Bunjin K-Descents. The effect of Bunjin K-Descents, we still got super long words here, allows you to negate one face-up card on your opponent's field until the end of the turn. Try summoning this guy. This guy looks like he can attack. He's a Beast Warrior. And this is a Beast Warrior, so both of them seems like they can attack. So it doesn't seem like it's as limited. Now I have a Beast Warrior type Bunjin on the monster on the field. Activate the effect of Bunjin Quailin that you sent to the graveyard earlier. Banish it from the graveyard to activate its effect and destroy your opponent's monster. Now our opponent has 4,500 health, so we're going to have to summon something pretty big here for that work. Bunjin Quailin has been banished from the graveyard. You can now activate the effect of Bunjin Arasuda from your hand. Activate the effect of Bunjin Arasuda and special summon it. Now I have 2 level 4 Bunjin monsters on your field. Try XYZ summoning Bunjin Tai Susawano. Now, interestingly, I would have sworn after getting a Pendulum Summon monster that we would be doing some Pendulum summoning, but noticeably, we are not. XYZ summon successful. Activate his effect and add Bunjin G Swallow to your from your hand to the deck. Or to your hand from the deck. It's real easy to play when the game tells you exactly what to do. Send this from your hand to the graveyard to activate its effect. Bunjin Tai Susawano will be able to attack twice during this turn. It's still not quite enough. No, it is. It would be 48 out of 45. Of course, if my opponent could stop me in any way, I would almost certainly lose this game. Because I would have no cards in my hand. If he destroyed the one creature on the field, that would have gone very poorly. Of course, the practice is scripted, so that wasn't going to happen. Here we have a big wall of text, so pause now if you want to read it. We will be playing for this card with a loner deck here. Which, yeah. Let's see how the play goes for real now. Now that the training wheels are taken off and we have to actually make our own decisions. We learned maybe 3 or 4 things there. Now, one thing I can say is that this Fire Formation Tenkai is a card that I play even to this date, so that may be an indication that we are approaching expansions that happened somewhat recently. Send the duplicate to the graveyards. Negate that, put that there. If I do this, I could summon 2 monsters on the field. I think we want to do this. This would give piercing damage to that, so I don't want to do that yet. Well, this is all going to become fairly difficult to wrap your head around because you're just not going to know what cards to summon. So I'm trying to quickly scroll through this. Okay. I think I might see the strategy here. We summon this. We activate this. We activate this. Let's see what else we can do. Actually, it seems like we can only do one thing, so let's go ahead and do that. I guess I could have returned this card and then gotten another card to draw from. I guess we're good. We could send this to the graveyard and see what we've got to summon. Just grab something. trying to figure out which one should be in the graveyard, which one should be in the hand. Pay 1,000 life points is asking, so we'll say yes, pay 1,000 life points so it doesn't destroy the card. This is making me think a little bit more. Let's see how all this works. That does imply more of a strategy element. I very possibly would have done more damage had I just summoned the monster. There's kind of little to do here. I could do this. I could return these two and shuffle it in the deck, but I don't see a real reason to shuffle that in the deck. If this returned this to my hand, that might be more valuable, but that might be a little overpowered. So it feels like we have 2, maybe 3 cards that would be valuable and useful from our graveyard. But noticeably, we're not seeing any options to trigger any of the effects from those cards in our graveyard. Okay. If I can attack here, I will win, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to do that. So we have maybe a little bit of card advantage, but not a ton. We need to get something with 1,500 or more attack very quickly, or something that in some other way would be able to do 1,500 damage. Thematically, having cards that work well in the graveyard would imply that those cards should be like zombie type, and then having cards that work in the hand maybe makes some sense. As far as, let's see, winged type characters. Do we have anything that get rid of the low attack character in favor of something higher attack. And we'll look at the special summon stuff, but I definitely don't think this is the time. This is crazy to have a Link summoned character that then cannot be used as Link material. Seems like they very early on are breaking their own concept. The only slight difference here between the Bunjin Tai and the last solo story is that the last solo story had more of a working together group of samurai feel to it, where the Bunjin definitely feel like they are a loosely affiliated team that really only works together a little bit. So again, just pause now if you want to read all this text. We're playing for this protector, and we're using this deck for the more difficult, medium difficulty challenge. This is another problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, is that you have art here that is far too busy. It's just way too much of brightly colored yellow in the scene. There just needs more dark colors, more negative space in general to fully get a silhouette of what the character is supposed to look like and just better understand what you're looking at. It might have made some sense if they said the Bunjin Tai were like speedster robots that moved really fast, or they were known for their strength or something. Because at the core of it, they really are just coming off as only having a slight description of being having items called Bujin, and even the items, the weapons, don't they really don't have a bunch of them. They're not doing anything with them. Let's see. We'll go ahead and send this to the graveyard. Maybe that wasn't the right move. What options do we have here? 1700, 2500. I think we basically have to take the 2500. I could P-scale this, but I wonder if P-scaling this is really just to get this on the field. Let's see, which one do we want? We'll just take this. Just bring back our character, which maybe has less value. Yep. So we definitely did a lot there, although I don't know how much of that really sets up for success yet. For all we know, this guy's gonna do 12 card plays, and clear the board and reset everything. I wonder about collectible card games, if it wouldn't make more sense to try and push severely different styles of collectible card games, although in fairness Marvel Snap kind of tried something like that, and Marvel Snap just wasn't very fun. But having, say, just 5 to 10 hero cards in your and certainly other games have tried this and failed, but I'd like to see somebody actually succeed on it, where you have a hero card and you stick with that hero card and you improve it by equipping or powering it up, leveling it up more often, instead of just having random assortments of cards. There are some examples that are similar to that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you have a weak version of a card that then can special summon from your deck a stronger version of the card. May be doomed. Don't think either one of these really saves the day. Go ahead and take this. Yeah, but even in the case of Yu-Gi-Oh!, as I struggle to have any commentary here, Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician, those are major recognizable cards that people really know and rather like, and there just isn't really an example of, I'm gonna try that again, of a pattern that takes Dark Magician into several different versions or several different animation levels. That Dark Magician, I think there's like a Kid Dark Magician or Dark Magician's Apprentice or something that can evolve to Dark Magician, and Dark Magician in the anime show I think eventually kind of turns into Dark Sage, if not turning into Black Luster Soldier. But I think that's pretty much it. So you have a 3-step evolution, but by the time the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime had ended, they had moved on away from Dark Magician into the Neos cards, I believe it was, for the next series. And tried to introduce a new hero type character. Let's just do some defense mode. Good old-fashioned defense mode. And let him clear the board and wreck my strategy on that mode first. Maybe that is a strategy that I have just been stubbornly refusing to consider, which is to just play a card in defense mode on the second turn. Because now we've seen them play a lot of their strategy, so now it just comes down to how do we defeat their strategy. What cards make the most sense? This needs to be in the graveyard. This can go into the hand. I'm gonna just save some time here and assume that I'm supposed to do this. think what you want probably is things that would go in the graveyard. Then you want to special summon something here. Then you need to decide what of these cards would be useful. I think this really is the only card that's useful. It certainly would make sense. Stick this one in the graveyard. So we click no, so it goes in the graveyard. Go ahead and activate this. So that was probably a terrible time to activate that. And that's basically the only thing we could do. Please tell me this is the one that can attack all opponents it controls once. Yes, it is, but I activated the card at the wrong time. So there clearly was a strategy there, which I could have destroyed that, and I boned it up. And that very well would have cleared the board, leaving him to only be able to do whatever he's doing now, leaving the opponent. Here you can see usage rates popping up, really just highlighting how little these cards are played. I've never seen anybody with a deck playing these cards in rank. There's just a massive amount of damage you can build up, or the opponent can build up against me. I don't think it's worth it to give that a third chance. Instead, let's just win with the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck and win an icon. I suppose it's worth mentioning that one of the few things that they've added recently to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is this proficiency rank, which includes some very random quiz questions and then some challenges. There are 10 levels of proficiency that you can unlock that give you small rewards and give you a proficiency rank that you can, I suppose, be proud of. I don't think anybody else is really going to care. The problem majorly with it is that the quizzes are asking you about questions about 1 out of 10,000 cards. So it is extremely random, and there's just no way that any one person would have that level of knowledge in their brain as far as knowing the names of cards or what the cards do. So inevitably, to get the proficiency rank up, you are just going to cheat by doing the quizzes multiple times through. And they do change the questions a little bit from a small selection. There's probably about 20 questions, and they ask you 10 each time. But even with that, that's not enough to really change anything. So It might take you 4 or 5 attempts, but eventually you will just get there. I'm just going to end the turn here. I guess. He's putting this one in defense mode. It must mean I can't do anything with him. Has a massive amount of cards though to be able to play in one turn. And he's not done yet. Is this finally going to be a deck that actually challenges the Zodiac Tri-Brigade? Well, I am going to need something big here, and we do have that, but certainly I'm not accustomed to having the Zodiac Tri-Brigade be so poorly received that I'm at half my health. Now, I'm straight up just hoping here that I don't need to activate any of Dryden's abilities and try and destroy these characters from a face-up position. Instead, I'm going to use Borbo to do just some direct damage. Go to main phase 2. Summon Zeus. And then end the turn. Now the hope is that he plays the remaining of these 5 cards. But I think I need to do this first. Seems to me like we still could lose here. We no longer have enough cards attached to activate Zeus's ability, and I need to do 3,300 damage to it, so I need to be able to summon something else. Now this could save me if something bad were to happen. This might save me too if something bad would happen, but I don't think I'm going to do any damage this turn. I don't know if there's a way to attach another card you control is destroyed by a battle or opponent's card effect. You can attach one card from your hand. which would imply it needs to be a monster card, not a spell or trap card. And this is probably a great example of where just if your opponent can only summon one monster and can't summon anything new, you can just put something face down and stretch out the game and use defense mode. But that really is only a delay tactic, and it's frankly just a really severe punishment that will only punish a small number of players that do run into that problem of not having something to summon because they didn't balance their deck right or they played too many cards. It's really a case where the punishment should either be more severe, where attacking a defense monster and destroying it took 100 points of health away from you always, or it needs to go in the other direction and not attacking a turn takes 100 points away from the other player. Something to break the tie, something to try to avoid a stalemate. I'm gonna risk this and assume that I'm just gonna win here. So that gets us through duel number 4, so we can look at duel number 5. Pause now if you want to look at this. All of a sudden now we're playing with Light Luna fusion monsters, it seems. Which, yeah, it definitely comes off more like these solo expansions really are trying to show you 2, maybe even 3 expansions worth of cards that are completely disconnected or sort of work together, but only in the way they play. Visually, they never seem to work together. Okay. Send one other Bujin to the graveyard. Which... send that one to the graveyard, which that maybe was a mistake. We are now seeing the Zodiac cards, but actually a fairly high number of Zodiac cards, more than you probably need. Activate this ability. Okay. Let's see what we can summon now. Well, suffice it to say, I know how this works. Okay, this is different. Slightly. We'll start with this one. Let's double check to see it's our first turn. Then we will go with this one. And see how this works. That should attach 2 more cards. Now what this will show off is that we have another card. This would be 2 level 5 monsters. And that you have this Zodiac Hammer Kong, which I don't use because I just don't really need to use it. But it may work fairly well here. So I guess the question is, do we save this for the next turn? I think you do. Meanwhile, what does this activate? Banish this from the graveyard. And we'll put this in the graveyard. And then we have to end the turn. Can't actually attack. Can go ahead and detach that and destroy that and see if that helps. Are we gonna win in 2 turns? Let's see. Activate this. Destroy this. And then should be able to cycle some more. We'll go ahead and activate this ability just to see what happens. What could have been attached? Nothing. Most of these XYZ characters cards don't have a default defense or attack. So when I summon this, it gains the attack and defense equal to the attack and defense of all Zodiac monsters attached to it as materials, which probably is 0 for most of them. Otherwise this would be very high. Now all the Zodiac cards do that, don't they? They gain the attack and the defense of all the other Zodiac monsters. So I wasted time there for not really a good reason. Let's just go ahead and summon this. 2 Bunjin monsters for 2400 or 2 level 5 monsters. I don't have 2 level 5 monsters. How can I summon this? Oh, I guess I could bring up this and XYZ summon it that way. Which definitely means that there was a trick there. In that I could have used, let's see, which card? This card, I believe, to bring about, say, this card in another spot. And then I could have used that card in another spot to special summon this card for an extra 2500. just add this to our hand and see if we can do anything with that. Hey, there we go. Looks like we probably have a one-turn kill here. Now. Certainly that is a different way to use Zodiacs, and that definitely is highlighting a deck style that is more focused on Zodiac cards. Not focusing on the Tri-Brigade cards at all. I think it is a little bit of a shame that, just like Magic the Gathering, a pure red deck will probably not win, but a red-green deck has a much higher chance of winning. Same is true in Yu-Gi-Oh! In that a pure Zodiac deck has very little chance of winning, but a Bunjinji Zodiac deck has a chance of winning. I don't think there was much higher of a strategy, and inherently in doing all these solo mode missions and levels, I'm never really going back to these decks and looking at them if there was some more of a strategy. So yeah, let's just see how the story is going to quote-unquote end. Let's see, Takamagahara, I believe, is their heaven, but they also use the phrase heaven and hell at one point. Once they returned to Takamagahara, with the three Bunjinji, saw was Harumi consumed by hatred due to the miasma. By the mighty power of the Dark Princess Goddess, the Bunjinji that were loaned to the Bunjintai will return to the rightful owner. I guess making corrupted versions. Then they saw the soft light that the weapons emitted at all times turn black as if ink was spilled over them. Notice how they're using blues and purples to indicate black. Harumi equipped them to descend as Amaterasu, the supreme goddess of darkness. Benevolent light that once emanated from her body was lost, and the world was plunged into darkness as if in a solar eclipse. The battle for the fate of heaven and earth has begun. The fierce battle took a toll on Takamagahara itself as well. The three Bunjintai who lost their weapons, Queen, Peacock, and Crow, struggled as they tried to fight their way through. They were greatly reduced in power before the battle, but they have not lost their fighting spirit. Each of the Bunjintai had their own divine sword, Crane, Ibis, and Swallow. Together they launch a counterattack. Finally, a slash by Susanoo, entrusted with the power of the sacred sword, splits the darkness in half. Amaterasu fell, and the miasma that infected the blackened Bunjinji was also vanquished. Thus, Haruko's ambitions that entangled heaven and earth had been crushed. Boy, that sure should have been an epic battle instead of just two sentences. But to the gods of Takamagahara, much remained to be done. The reconstruction of Takamagahara and salvation of the earth. A new battle was about to begin to fulfill their godly duties. That definitely feels like that is a cliffhanger to unlock a continuation of this at some point in the future. Let's see what this card pack looks like as far as the featured cards and how many of these I already have, which I really have no idea how many cards I really have, because I wouldn't ever really take notice if I had Bujin cards or not. I would say this is probably a decent candidate of a secret pack to open. I own none of the ultra rares and only one of the super rares. Unfortunately, if I am going to open this pack, it is going to be a fairly large risk. And that's probably a risk I just don't want to take. So I'm going to say no to that. And with that, unless it also secretly unlocked some story mode, I would assume we only have this terminal world, which that sounds more electronic and sci-fi. Yeah, there's no second chapter yet, and I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a second chapter for the Bunjin story for months, if not a year or two. I also wouldn't be surprised if we got second chapters on some of these other solo stories, since they all kind of just end on not complete endings. You could always make another chapter. They never end on something and then the world was perfect forever and ever and ever. But yeah, we're making progress and catching up, and it's kind of nice to be ahead instead of always behind on these solo modes, even though they're kind of a waste of time too. Alright, well that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.